Most players believe common myths about CS2 that hold them back from real improvement. Today, we're busting 7 of the biggest myths that everyone gets wrong and showing you how to take your game to the next level. I'm Louie, and in this video, we'll break down why trading isn't always as fair as you think, and why CT shouldn't just sit back and never peek. We'll talk about why following every gun tier list will instantly make you better, and how lurkers can and should play actively to create pressure. You'll learn why aggression isn't just for entry fraggers, why kills don't define your usefulness, and how you can climb the ranks even without voice communication by reading the game and your teammates. Timestamps are in the description, so feel free to jump to any myth you like. Now, the first myth is that trades are always fair. In most basic CS guides, trading is presented as a good thing, and in some situations it is. On T side, going 1 for 1 usually benefits you. If you're pushing a site with 4 or 5 players, losing one teammate while removing a CT still leaves you with a numbers advantage on that site. For example, if you execute onto B on Inferno and trade your entry fragger for the site anchor, you now have a 4v1 or a 4v2 situation to deal with, which is heavily stacked in your favor. But on CT side, it's a completely different story. Losing a defender early means you have fewer players to cover the entire map. One teammate going down often forces rotations that leave other areas exposed. Imagine on Mirage, your B anchor gets 1 kill but dies to a trade. Now your A site players are split between watching mid and covering a weak B site. The T's can regroup and hit whichever site is vulnerable, and you'll be a step behind. So instead of looking for trades on CT, trade map control instead. So if your connector player dies, have your B anchor or A anchor try to take space on their side of the map to get some sort of information. This will lead the CTs in being able to overstack a site, and with the right information, it will be the right one most of the time. Now, the takeaway of this tip is that when you're on CT, you don't just want even fights, or you don't always want to look for trades. You want to make sure that if you are going for a fight, it's going to be a clean fight, and if you do lose it, make sure that your extremity players are ready to take some sort of map control to gain that information advantage. Now, the second myth is something that a lot of newbies love to say, especially on Reddit, is that if you're on CT, you should never peek. Now, this is a common piece of advice where people would say, don't peek on CT, let them come to you. And yes, holding angles and playing safe is important, but taking that advice literal can hand over the entire map for free. A well-timed peek can disrupt the T's plan, burn their utility, and give you valuable information. For example, on Overpass, if you decide to go push into connector at the start of the round on CT, you can hear a lot of information. You can even block them with a smoke or catch someone off guard in water if the T's decide to not even play in connector. The key is calculated aggression. Peek with utility, have an escape route ready, and avoid taking unnecessary risks. Look at pro matches. CTs often fight early for areas like banana on Inferno or long on Dust 2. They don't do it mindlessly, they do it to keep the T's guessing and stop them from feeling comfortable. Aggression without structure is basically just throwing, but never showing aggression at all, that's just giving the other team full control. Skinland just brought back skin selling even after Valve's new Steam Trade Protection update. Now when you sell skins, your funds hit 8 days after the trade, and that's because trades can be canceled for up to 7 days. But Skinland's already adapted, and the process is smooth, safe, and back in action. And selling's simple. Drop your trade URL, pick your skins, enter your email, then choose a payment method, either Visa, crypto, and a tons more. If you guys use my code LouisCS2 and you sell $100 worth of skins, you get $10 for free. Skinland has the lowest prices, huge variety, and tons of easy top-up options, way cheaper than Steam. Check them out below, and thank you to Skinland for sponsoring this video. The third myth is that lurkers should lurk every round. Now, when people think of a lurker role in CS2, they often imagine someone sitting back, holding flanks, and letting the rest of the team go in first. But lurkers can and should play actively. If your entries are struggling, you can step in and create space yourself. A good example of this is on Mirage. Instead of hanging out and lurking in upper B, waiting for your team, or trying to listen for rotations, go ahead and just throw a lurk smoke, flash out the windows, and try to take an isolated engagement. When you're doing this, you're still lurking, but now you're creating pressure and causing the CTs to move, which will open up gaps for your aggressive players trying to take map control in mid. If you look at someone like Rops, he is an active lurk. Sometimes he may lurk, and other rounds he understands he has to make a move. But something to note is that when Rops isn't getting very active in his lurk role, he plays a few rounds with the pack just so he can still stay active. The best lurkers adapt. Some rounds you'll lurk, others you'll be right there in the execute using your utility or maybe even entry. Now, the fourth myth that I want to talk about is only entry should make aggressive plays. If your designated entry isn't doing their job, you can take that role temporarily entirely no matter what role you're playing. If you're the B anchor on Mirage and maybe your team isn't that good at fighting mid and they just constantly keep dying, something you can do is instead of just jump spotting B and waiting for those players to try to do something, you can take control in that part of the map. Being aggressive is a personality that you have in game, so no matter if you're an anchor, opper, or even an IGL, you define how you play your role with what you're comfortable with. Aggression isn't a title you're assigned at the start of the match, it's a tool anyone can use as long as you understand timings, angles, and when to back out. Another example is on CT Nuke, you might peek door with a flash from a teammate to clear an early rush, or on T side, you might lurk out a palace on Mirage while your team pressures mid, and this pretty much just splits the CTs in half, causing over rotations and a lot of chaos. But the trick is that you always want to mix it up. If you repeat the same move, chances are you'll probably just get countered. Now the fifth myth is that if you're not fragging, you're basically useless. Kills get you on the highlight reel, but smart utility and positioning will have much more impact. If you smoke off a key choke point, molly a common plant spot, or flash a teammate into sight, you're creating opportunities that can win the round without you ever firing a bullet. Pros like Zipix, Perfecto, or Inters have built careers on impact that doesn't always show in the kill column. Something you can do is keep track of how you're using your utility in the scoreboard. You can keep track of enemies flashed and utility damage. This is important if you are throwing the same flash and not blinding opponents, or maybe you're throwing an HE but not dealing any damage. Using the scoreboard can help you understand how you should be changing your flashes or the timing of your HEs. In your games, look at your utility usage. Are you throwing your smokes and flashes to give your team an edge, or are you hoarding them until it's too late? A well piece of utility can do more for your team than an aim duel you might lose. Now the last myth is myth number 6, and that you can't win without voice comms. Good communication is a bonus, but that's not a requirement for climbing ranks. In solo queue, mics are often unreliable, some people don't talk at all, or others just won't shut up. The trick is learning to read your teammates through their positioning and actions. If your teammates start throwing flashes over mid and running into connector, you don't need him to say I'm pushing con, you can see it and adjust your play. Watching utility usage, player movement, and your own minimap can give you all the info you need to make solid decisions, and it keeps you from getting tilted when no one talks.